Could you please
Thank
introduce
you.
yourself for our audience today?
Definitely. So, hi, this is Kshama Dharwadkar here. I'm an assistant professor of French at Goa University in the discipline of French and Francophone studies. I, of course, teach the language. I teach papers on translation, phonetics, mythology, and also French for special purposes, such as business French. Translation is definitely my forte. In addition to that, as an assistant professor, I also go around presenting papers and research that is done in the domain of translation by me and my students. And yes, of course, I love to read.
Of course, that goes without saying. I think that's part of being a language teacher also.
Yes.
So, Kshama, since you mentioned that you are a professional of translation, and I know that because I've been following your work. So translation is often called an act of deep listening to start with. So what does it feel like to you personally to inhabit a text so completely that you can carry it into another language?
This reminds me of a theory of translation where it says that a translator should submit himself or herself to the text. So when I teach, sometimes I really wonder, oh, how do you do that? But when you're actually translating, yes, you have to do that because I believe that before you translate, this is something I often tell my students as well. Let me make one thing very clear here is I have not really taught literary translation, but I do read works that have been translated. And I've also done some research papers on that, some amount of research on literary works that have been translated. But I consider myself more of a scientific and technical translator than a literary translator. But however, having said that, I've also done 2 short stories from French into Marathi of Maupassant in collaboration with a colleague of mine from the discipline of Marathi, because of course we needed help to write things down. So one thing I always tell my students is however big the text is when you translate, whether it's one paragraph, it's one page, or it's an entire document, you should first read the text. First read the text, understand the text, break it down, and then actually start translating. Of course, if you have the time to do all of that, like when I worked in the translation industry, you don't really have to have the time to read an entire text, say, which is 10,000 words or 1 lakh words. But the one advice that we were always given was understand it globally. You just cannot say, okay, I'm getting into translation and start translating paragraph wise, and then you make mistakes because you don't know what the text is about. Another advice that we were always given, since of course we used CAT tools, and CAT tool doesn't show you the entire text. It shows you like an Excel sheet in 2 columns, right? So one thing we were told, because the CAT tool also allows you to look at the text globally, there is another feature which allows you. We were told that from time to time, go back and see what the text looks like. See what is the flow of the text. Try to understand. Now, even though this advice was given for a scientific and technical text, I believe it holds true for every kind of text.
That's true.
Yeah. So yes, read the text, understand the text, and only then try to put it in your own language. If not, no. But also, this is something I've come across while reading, or I have also come across these things from my students who worked on their dissertations in translation, is that not everything is translated. Certain words are maintained as is to not really to make the text exotic, but they wouldn't carry the meaning. Like last year when I was teaching my translation paper, and even though it was the general translation paper, the theories and the practice, that was not literary, one of my students came up and said, ma'am, the book which won the Booker Prize, Heart Lamp, the translator says, Deepa Basti, her interview is there, and she says that she never translated the word shaitan. She kept it as is.
Yes.
Now, why did she keep it as is? I then went up and looked up, is because she says the word Satan or demon doesn't explain what this means. So in the book, in the translation, she doesn't even italicize it. She
Yeah.
keeps it as is.
It's as
Yeah.
is. Exactly. Yeah.
As is. Okay. And another thing is, when my student was working on, another student, she was working on Ret Samadhi in French. So Hindi to French, she was analyzing the translation. And she came up with some beautiful examples because it's Hindi to French. And she said, ma'am, there's Bisleri here. And in French, it's just eau mineral. They wouldn't understand what it
Yeah.
is. Or in Hindi, there is amrud. And in French, it becomes pomegranate.
Yeah.
So she's like, see, ma'am, how it has changed.
Yes.
And another example that we both liked was, and we tried to find an explanation to it together, was in the Hindi version, you have Chanda Mama. And in French, it becomes Madame la Lune. It becomes feminine.
Okay. Very interesting.
So we both came up with an explanation saying that in Hindi, the mama is more close, like maa ka bhai. But in French, we're giving it a very professional outlook and calling it Madame la Lune.
Yeah.
I mean, this was our explanation
It's
that we came
interesting
up
because
with.
I always,
Yeah.
in my head, it was also because Chanda is masculine and Lune is feminine. That's
Feminine.
how I had seen it. But this is an interesting explanation that you.
So this is something we came up with all together. Of course, we were in contact with Madame Annie Monto, and but even then, this was something that skipped her mind to ask the question about. And then she's like, "Ma'am, what do I write for this? This is an interesting thing." So we said, "Okay, let's come up with something." And this is, you feel what the translator has done.
Exactly.
So yeah.
But that's the beauty of languages and literature, right? How you perceive it. And I mean, I had never thought of this. So yeah, this is an interesting.
Okay.
So it's interesting because we're talking about in terms of the how it translates and how it's different, and sometimes how some things aren't translatable. But there are times when certain things get lost in the translation. And it's a bit sad. There's a certain texture that's kind of lost. So to give you an example, so I have a very close friend who works as a translator. She's French. She translates from English to French. And she had done her PhD on Salman Rushdie. So she's read all the books in English, and she's also read the French translation. And she had visited India, and in fact, that's how we became friends. And it stayed with me. I don't know if she remembers this example, but in the translation in French, Salman Rushdie refers in Midnight's Children, he refers to Kemp's Corner in Bombay. And in French, it's actually been translated as Coin du Kemp. Which is just so strange, and she and I, we had gone together to Kemp's Corner, and she was like, this has been translated literally, and it just doesn't explain what it is. And she realized that perhaps the translator had maybe not even visited Bombay before translating the text.
Correct.
And to her, it was a big loss because she said, if you don't come here, you don't get the same feeling. So have you ever come across such an example, either in your readings, analysis?
Not really, because I should say that whatever I've read in translation, I've really been very fortunate enough to read good translations.
Yes, yeah.
So definitely, I mean, I would say that. And actually two of my favorite translators. One is Daisy Rockwell, because I've read her translations of Usha Priyamvada, which are from Hindi to English.
Okay.
And my other favorite translator is Shanta Gokhale. I mean, I must say that she translated Shyamachi Aai from Marathi, which is considered to be a phenomenal book in Marathi, which is like, I mean, of course, I don't know about today's generation in Maharashtra about it, but there was a time when this book is like a Bible, which tells you, which gives you life lessons.
Yes.
And it's life lessons by a mother who's in a village and telling how her child to behave in this world, to be honest, to be truthful, to be righteous. And when I read it in English, I've read it in Marathi, of course, and then I read it in English, I was stunned. I was like, oh my God, she has not lost anything in translation. And the same I felt for Daisy Rockwell also. Again, I've not read the Hindi in this case, but I've read the English. Is you nowhere feel she has translated from Hindi. She's done it so beautifully.
Wow.
So beautifully done. So maybe I've not come across bad.
Very fortunate, I would say. Very, very fortunate.
Fortunate, yes.
Okay.
So
yes,
that's
pretty interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
in your reading, since you've brought up these examples, do you feel that when you worked a little bit like the Maupassant story, you work between French and Marathi primarily when it comes to literary translation, the work that you've done. So do you feel that translation has changed the way that you read in your mother tongue in Marathi? Or like, is there something that changed when after you translated that work from French to Marathi? How you perceive the book, perhaps?
To answer your question, even before I started translating, or I translated those two stories into Marathi. I mean, once I understood that, I wanted to be a translator, or this is what I really like, I think I started appreciating translations better. Even before actually getting into translation, when you realize that, oh, this is what I'm going to research on, you start appreciating things. So before we actually did this exercise of translating, I had done two papers of French translations into Marathi, two research papers. So one of the examples I often cite is uh, the book Huis Clos of Sartre, the play. And it has been translated into Marathi. Now, there is this one example where the word is voile in French.
Okay.
And now, of course, voile is like a scarf. But when the text gets translated in Marathi, the voile, the scarf, becomes padar, like sadicha padar. And you're like, oh, so because a scarf doesn't exist in Marathi. So you start observing these little nuances. Also, the other thing I had done, this was again, I had compared the Konkani and the Marathi translation of Avar. And then you see the difference between even the two translations.
Yeah.
The Konkani, like, even though they're Indian languages, they're so different from each other.
Yes, of course.
And you start observing these little differences. Now, when we actually did Maupassant, we did two stories. One was La Parure, the famous one, and the other one was called Rose. So when we did La Parure, we didn't really face so many difficulties while translating, because we felt that somewhere it was a very straightforward story. So it wasn't so difficult. But when we did Rose, we realized that there were too many descriptions. Like, I think the first, it's been a while now, but the first paragraph, the first couple of paragraphs is descriptions, like very realism types, the descriptions of flowers, of trees. And the biggest problem we faced there was, how do we describe them in Marathi? Because then there's no equivalent word for these things. So initially we thought that many of these descriptions were actually not really helping with the storyline, the flow of the incidents. So first we thought we would drop it out. But then when we actually sent the story for publication, they said, no, you cannot drop it out. You cannot take that liberty. Yeah, because sometimes the translator also has the liberty to drop out things. But no, they said, no, you can't do this. So then we said, what do we do? And then we realized, okay, nothing doing. We keep the same terms because we can't. The scene is happening in France. So obviously these flowers have to exist. But so these were our experiences when translating. However, like I said, as a student of translation, as a teacher of translation, even when you're watching subtitles, you start appreciating things. Like you're watching something in French, but the subtitle is in English, you definitely start appreciating things, or something just catches your eye. Like this is one favorite example of mine that I give is the series Lupin. And the English subtitle says, oh, we will be jobless tomorrow, the subtitle. Whereas he says in French, demain c'est pour l'emploi pour nous. Pour vous, sorry.
Which is completely different. Yes.
Completely. So if you know French, you know what Pôle emploi is. But if you see the subtitle, it's jobless. So
it's
you
not
see,
the same
one
thing.
of my favorite examples.
Okay.
So,
So Since you brought up again Arsène Lupin, big classic in French literature.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what would be your recommendation to somebody who wants to start reading beyond maybe English, world literature?
Mm-hmm.
It could be French
Mm-hmm.
literature, it could be something in our own Indian languages, but they don't know
Mm-hmm.
where to start. So what would be one recommendation
Okay.
you would give them? Which is
Okay, so if they want to start reading French, but in
Mhm,
English, obviously, because somebody who doesn't know French, I would say start with something as simple but as deep as Le Petit
mhm,
Prince.
mhm.
Okay, which is such a tiny book, but full of meaning, full of life lessons.
Yes.
But having said that, when we speak of world literature, also, if you see in India, even literature that is written in Indian languages, India itself is like a little world out there,
Exactly,
subcontinent,
yeah.
Indian subcontinent. So we can even read books which are written in Indian languages but translated in
Hmm.
English. So one example that I gave is Shyamachi Aai.
Yes, I was just
Classic,
thinking, yeah.
classic. I
Yeah.
don't think anybody should skip it.
Yes.
Another book that I really like, which has been translated from Bengali into English, is After Kurukshetra of Mahashweta Devi. These are
Mm-hmm.
not stories that have really happened, but these are stories that she's imagined. And what I liked is she speaks after Kurukshetra, like the title says,
Mm-hmm.
and she speaks of not really three characters, but characters in these three stories. Nobody thought of them. They are
Mm-hmm.
so inconspicuous in the main story of the Mahabharata, but what really happens after?
Hmm.
So that's another book that I
That
really
would highly
like.
recommend.
And of course, if we talk of world literature, but in English again, I would say The Kite Runner.
Interesting.
I know, very tragic, very this strong, emotionally charged kind of a book, but definitely The Kite Runner.
Yeah, sometimes you have to read those books in order to deepen the whole
Yes,
appreciation of
yes.
literature, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So, yeah, these would be my recommendations.
Great. Of which one of them is actually included in the Be a Reader app, which you will see soon.
Okay, okay,
So,
okay.
to my final question, actually. So, Be a Reader, the
Yeah.
app, our whole premise is that people aren't reading enough. And
Mm-hmm.
when it's either passive scrolling on social media, or it's one of the
Mm,
new apps that tend to summarize things and break them down instead of,
mm,
actually encouraging full reading.
mm,
And
mm-hmm,
our whole idea is that guided reading
mm,
can help people discover the joy
mm,
of reading. So, from that
mm.
point of view, to you, what would be a good feature to have on a reading platform of this sort? Read.
That's an interesting question because I've never really come across a reading platform myself. I always pick up a
Read.
book and I read. I mean,
Okay.
let me tell you, I even tried using the Kindle. I just couldn't get the feel. It just didn't feel like I'm reading. It's like, you're just scrolling.
Yeah,
I
I know.
discarded it. I
Yes.
just couldn't. I just
Hmm.
couldn't. So, but here's something I do sometimes. I don't know what the features you have and you have incorporated, but if I come across a book, like most of the times, I will see like a new book that's come up on scroll.in. They have a short extract from the
Yes.
book that they'll so,
Hmm.
and then I will go and see, oh, this extract is interesting. Okay, I add it to my cart. Or there
Right.
are certain authors I like, if they've come up with another book, I do put it in. So if you can do something like, for example, one author who has multiple books, if you could have a list of their books that have
Hmm.
already been written by them, those or before a reader picks up a book, if you could a little summary of the book, which what do they call it now, clickbait,
Yes.
like intrigues the reader to read more. So sometimes I do that as well. I check out the summary. Or I have seen this a lot on Instagram also, where people recommend books, and they're like the little scrolling thing where you have the book, the little summary of the book, and then these are the
Hmm.
must have or the must read kind of
Yes.
books. So yeah, something maybe, like I said, maybe the list of books by the same author.
Yes, I think that is
So
something we could
which
easily
genre you
incorporate.
place them in. Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
one of the author I've read all their books, I can say, is Dan Brown, and the other is Ashwin Sanghi.
Hmm.
And so something like this.
Something of that sort.
So you have a list of their books and you see, okay, this guy has written all of this.
Great. I think that's something we
So
could
I don't know,
certainly
just a
incorporate.
suggestion. Yeah.
All suggestions are welcome. So thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Kshama, for this.
Thank
And
you.
I look forward to sharing the app with you next week.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing it and using it.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for having me.
You're most welcome. It was a pleasure.
Thank